Okay, a lot of people have been asking me how I make my bread. It's a real easy recipe. It's a no knead recipe. It's only 4 ingredients. And the only thing you really have to plan is when you start it, you'll have to let it sit overnight. Since it's a no knead recipe, the gluten develops overnight. So I'm starting mine now. It's 9:41 in the evening, and I'm going to start this and let it sit overnight. Let me show you the 4 ingredients. There's flour, there's water, there's yeast, and there's salt. First thing I do is I just roughly measure. Doesn't have to be perfect. I know baking, they say, is a science, but not always. 2 cups of my 3 cups of flour that I'm going to use total. I usually go ahead and measure out the 3rd cup. The next ingredient is yeast. And what I use is a 1/4 teaspoon of yeast, and then just a pinch more. And the next ingredient is salt. I don't even have to measure this one, but a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Give that a little stir. And the last ingredient is 12 ounces of water. And if you're going to add anything to the bread, like if you want to make an onion bread or you want to throw salami or olives or anything in it, now is the time you want to do that. So after you get your 2 cups of flour, your salt, and your yeast, just go ahead and add your 12 ounces of water. And I use the wooden handle on this basting brush to stir it with, and you'll see why in a second. I like the fact that it has a flat end on it, and I can go around and scrape the sides of the bowl. And this stirring without adding that 3rd cup of flour is what's going to develop the gluten and give you a nice crispy crust and a bread with a nice texture to it. Once you get all that 2 cups of flour incorporated, just kind of whip it for a minute. And you can even add your flavoring ingredients. If you want to make a rudimentary rye bread, you could add rye seeds, or caraway seeds rather, at this point. It'll give it a nice rye flavor. Cheese, grate some cheese up. Asiago cheese is really good. You can throw it in at this point. Just go around the bowl. And you see, basically you have a nice batter. All the lumps are beaten out of it. And let's see if I can do this in a minute. Now's when you can add that last cup of flour. Be careful with it. You start stirring it now, you'll sling flour out. So be gentle until you incorporate most of it. I'm trying to keep that bowl centered up for you. Kind of rotate it in on itself. And you can see I haven't even touched this dough yet. Just keep stirring it. Every now and then I'll scrape off the handle. Go back in. You can see it starting to come together now. It's picking up all that flour. The thing I like about this recipe too is there's not a whole lot to clean other than the handle of this basting brush and the bowl that this is in. This is just about ready. Really isn't much to clean. That's just about right. You can see it hasn't been very long. It's a very quick recipe. Okay, at this point, might want to flour your hands a bit. And you don't really have to knead this. I just kind of go in and pick up the last little bits of flour that didn't get stirred in. Work it a little bit. Not really kneading it, it's just kind of gathering it. And that's it. That's all you have to do. Now, I will let this sit on the counter. It doesn't have to be in a really warm room or anything like that. Just let it sit. I'll come back in tomorrow in the kitchen and you'll see how this has filled the bowl with dough. That's the yeast developing, or the flour developing the gluten that's going to give you your nice crust. So I just cover it. I happen to have this lid that fits this old bowl of mine really well. You can cover it with plastic wrap and that'll do just fine. But let it sit and we'll come back in the morning and I'll show you how to finish this loaf. It literally takes less time to finish it and get it ready and put it in the pan than it does to mix it up. So we'll see you in the morning. Okay, it's 7:30 the next morning and I'm going to show you how much this dough has risen overnight. I have not touched this since I covered it up last night. Check that out. Isn't that amazing? You see all the bubbles in it, and in a minute we're gonna dump this out and put it in our bread pan here. And this is a 9 1/4 by 5 1/4 by 2 3/4. It's an old, really old Sears bread pan. Works great. Just the right size for this loaf. But the first thing you do, just a less than a splash there of oil. And use my basting brush and I cover the sides, making sure I get the corners with oil. Make sure it's nice and lubed up. There we go. That's ready to go. And grab my spatula over here to get this bread out. Now, one thing you want to do is flour your surface countertop really well here. We're turning this dough out. A little flour on your hands. Now, you're going to see how clean this dough comes out of this bowl. You're probably thinking, that looks a little sticky. A little bit, but it comes out really clean. And you'll see the gluten has formed, and you'll see how the dough stretches out with little strings. That's exactly what you want. So take this, and let's move this over just a little bit. There we go. I don't know if you can see there in the bowl. See how stringy that is? That's what you want. We'll take this, let gravity do the work. Let's go along the sides of the bowl. Go around. Oh, look at that. Comes out pretty clean, huh? Okay. Now once you get your bread out, a little flour on it. This is the only real work to this. You see it's not sticky. It would look sticky, but it's not. You turn it, rotate it 90 degrees, turn it again, keep folding it like that. Do this 3 or 4 times. Flatten this out. You get one more turn out of it. Like that. You try and pinch my bottom seam so it doesn't split open, and a little bit on the ends. If you have any dry spots, you can always pinch them off and let them throw them away. But normally, if you keep your dough covered, this is what you come out with. Alright, there's our bread pan, and that's it. Even it out. Now what I normally do is I'll cover this with a clean cloth and stash it in a warm place until it's risen, well, just about that much over the side, about a half an inch or so over the side of the pan. And when I see it getting that close, I'll start preheating my oven. But let's put this in a warm place and let it start to rise. Okay, you can see how much this bread has risen. It's been a little over an hour for me. Your rise time might vary depending on your temperature where you're at. My oven has a few more degrees to go before it's fully preheated. You want to preheat it to 400 degrees. But while I'm waiting for it to come up to temperature in the oven, this is when I like to slash the top of my loaf. This allows the loaf to rise better. You'll get a much higher dome on the bread, and it quite frankly makes it look pretty. I use a little X-Acto knife with a curved blade. I've got different blades. I use these just for my bread, but I like to slash the loaf. And you start at one end, and you use a sharp knife. And you can see how it kind of just opens up. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is give this an egg wash. This is a beaten egg. Beat it well with about a tablespoonful of water. And I'm just going to brush this on the top of the loaf. Use a really good basting brush and it won't disturb your loaf. Those old-fashioned bristle brushes that they used to have, those things will beat the heck out of the top of your loaf. I like to use these silicone basting brushes. Get that egg wash on there. Yeah, and I know some people don't like to use an egg wash because they think it wastes a lot of egg. I mean, you're just using a little bit of egg for the loaf, and people don't like to throw away the egg. Well, you don't have to throw it away. I'm going to take this egg and I'm going to put it in a microwave or a skillet and cook that up and put that on an egg sandwich. Now, while you got the egg on the top of the loaf, grab you some oats. This is just for appearance. You don't need much, just a little sprinkle across the top. Like that. Some of these will fall off when you pull it out. That's fine. Just give it some oats. There you go, stay on there. You can get on there too. All right, okay. Now, I'm gonna let this sit for another few minutes and we'll pop this right in the oven. And we'll bake this for 40 minutes at 400 degrees. Okay, it's been 40 minutes. Let's see what we got. Look at that. Piping hot right out of the oven. You can see how much it's risen. And those toasted oats tasting smell great. Let's get this out of the pan. Look how nice that comes out. Ooh, it's hot. Okay, so there's your quick and easy 4-ingredient, no knead, unless you spell it with an N, E-E-D. It's a no knead recipe, and you'll find this one super easy to bake, especially if you're quarantined up for this coronavirus. But give it a shot and tell me what you think. Tell me what you add to it to flavor it, and enjoy your baking.